Just want to welcome everybody to the Masjid of Higher Learning. So a little bit earlier today, I was sitting down relaxing, and I was in contemplative thought, strategic thought, and going within myself to get insight. And I'm realizing that it's almost about in a 1 year anniversary on the death of Kobe Bryant. It was around this same time last year. And it felt like it was almost yesterday. I can even remember exactly what I was doing. I remember that Saturday night before Sunday when we got that information, I was watching the Lakers versus the 76ers, I remember. I mean, it was like it was yesterday, man. So I remember when the Kobe Bryant thing came, it had a very, very dramatic, powerful, intense impact, on basically, I'll say, across North America. And then, of course, after that, you had COVID-19, which was a worldwide quote unquote pandemic. So, and ever since COVID-19, everything's been different. A lot of businesses shut down, etc. So 2020 had a lot of, crazy stuff going on. So now that we're in 2021, about a year later, in the top of the year, what I want to do in this tape is basically give some of the insight that I have from, of course, research, study, and when I sit back and, just use my own logic and reasoning, I can kind of project what's going on, right now and what's going to happen in the future somewhat. So in previous tapes, I've talked a little bit about the digilic system or the anti-human system, all right, which ultimately is something that's controlled and implemented by the ruling global elite, the people who are controlling a lot of the world's wealth and resources. And they are the ones who are dictating the social programming across the various, countries within the media. And they also are controlling the governments. So basically, we're talking about, the real human beings, who are flesh and blood that participate in the ruling global system that a lot of us have a lot of various names for. But in this tape, I want to keep it very, very general. But the ruling global system, and a lot of the things that they're doing today is not anything new. You had people in the ancient world, in the medieval periods, or basically just in different windows of time prior to where we are today, who were the ruling global elite of those days, and they ruled the resources and dictated the social engineering of those days as well. And the same thing that the people today who are the ruling global elite, the things that they are attempting, a lot of the quote unquote conspiracy theories that we hear of that, some of these people may be planning for the world as a whole. These things were going on also in the ancient world. You had people who were learned back then and that were researching, they were being looked at as, tinfoil hat wearers and things like that too. And conspiracy theorists people, and looked at people as like, you're just doing a bunch of talking, man. And one of those people is the either historical character or the historical archetype group of people in the ancient biblical story of Noah that was in the pre-flood world. So something that's going to be very, very important in this tape is to understand the pre-flood world and the post-world flood, okay? So a lot of us have heard about the flood story. And when I say the flood, what I mean is of course, it may have been some geographic events such as things going on with the oceans, continental drifts, etc., volcano eruptions, etc. But I'm also talking about the different, we could say, events and the different things that the people of the time who were on the planet, the result of a lot of the things that they were doing. So let's say those global elite people of that time period in the pre-flood world, they had things that they were attempting, and they either got to see the result of the things that they attempted being positive or it was negative. And a lot of the things that they were doing really resulted in a negative thing for them, okay? And it destroyed and really ended a lot of their own civilizations. So it was somewhat like a self-implosion type thing. But they didn't really know it and weren't aware that a lot of the things that they were doing that were, designed to help them in the future, it really was going to be something to end up hurting them. And I'll give you an example of that. So, like in the Twilight Zone, that was one of my favorite shows growing up watching. there was an episode of this where this man, long story short, he hated people, and he felt like he wanted to just be away from people. He hated when people tried to have conversations with him, and he felt like a world all by himself would be the most beautiful, perfect thing. So he made almost like, a wish, and then the next day he woke up, it happened. When he went to the banks, no one was there. When he walked outside, etc., no one was there. And at first he was very, very happy because he didn't hear all those cars, all the horns going off, all the people talking on the phones, people always in his face, etc. He didn't have to experience that. So at first he was cool with it. But as time went on, he went in certain stores and there was no one there to serve him. And then he started kind of freaking out because he was all by himself. So these ruling elite of today, they will experience something that is somewhat similar to that. Now, I'm not saying that everybody on the planet is going to disappear, but what I mean is that the things that they wish for, they're going to end up getting, but it's not going to be the way they want it to be. So what we're going to talk about in this tape is ultimately we're going to go over that digilic system and realize that all this stuff that we've been seeing going on in the past year and even in the prior years, because they've been preparing us for this for a while. Ultimately, right now, the fork is we at a fork in the road now. A lot of people prior to this were on the fence. They were playing in the middle. They were believing that some of this stuff may be true, but then also they would turn it back off and maybe just go back to work or go back to partying or going back to the bars and the lounges. And they were looking at, being a person that's trying to be a true person to get knowledge and learn what the truth is, like that's a part-time thing. Like I don't have to really fully be into that. I could be just a citizen of Babylon and just partake in all the distractions of Babylon, ultimately that feel good, like in the Matrix when that guy said he knew the Matrix was fake, but hell, why not be in it? You got a lot of people that think like that today, and those people basically have come to a point now where there's a fork in the road and we all have to make a choice now. So are we going to be on the side of the digilic system, which is ultimately a form of slavery, or are we going to choose freedom ultimately? And when I say freedom, that will be expressed and displayed in a lot of different ways by our actions. So I'm not even necessarily talking about going and it being a physical war and a physical revolution and all that, because a lot of that may be a distraction to get you to not see what it really is, but it's just in your choices. A lot of us got to make some more serious choices. What is our real priority? How are we going to get money and at the same time keep our spirituality? In these hard times, how are we going to support, our friends and families and people who we care about and stuff like that? So we really got to answer some questions, and we really got to see what side of the field we on, So that's ultimately what we dealing with. And to make this clear, I want to read two things because these global elite people that I'm talking about, ultimately, they have a coalition. And whenever you have multiple people coming together with one idea, no matter if it's good or evil, if they stay consistent at it, it will come into fruition. Let me repeat that one more time. Whenever you have multiple people coming together with one agenda, no matter if it's good or evil, no matter if it's favorable or unfavorable for humanity, if those people are consistent with it, and at some point, it's going to start coming into fruition. All right. Now, all of us are familiar with the ancient story of Noah, as I said before, and the prophet Yahushua in the New Testament in Luke 17. I want to read something he said. So this is coming out of Luke 17, verse 26 through 27. And he said, quote, "Just as it was in the days of Noah, so also will it be in the days of the Son of Man. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage up to the day Noah entered the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed them all." So right here, Yahushua, or who we know of as quote unquote Jesus, what he's saying right here is that in the days of the Son of Man, it's going to be just like in the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, people were eating and drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage. So ultimately, they were just living their everyday lives, going to work, going to the movies or whatever it is people do that really just distract themselves. Maybe they weren't trying to get to the truth. Maybe they were living in the Matrix and had certain information that they knew that it was a bullshit society. But they just was like, man, I'm going to just, get along with it or whatever, because I know a lot of folks like that. I know people that I've let, read my books and things of that nature. And then they'll still say, this is cool, but man, I'm going to just go on back to church. So, those types of people. And Noah had those types of people around him. People looked at him like, man, why you working on that boat? And, you a fool and stuff like that. I mean, even if you read in the Quran, they say that people literally would come and release themselves in the ark when Noah wasn't even around, when things of that nature, trying to destroy the ark, just roasting and clowning the man all the time. He dealt with a lot of guilt and confusion, behind it, because just like you feel it sometimes, you be asking yourself like, man, is all this true stuff, and trying to read all this stuff, and am I really just some conspiracy nut? You kind of, question yourself. I mean, and Noah had to go through that full process, because that part of that is actually seeking true freedom, and true liberation. And we all know that, of course, Noah survived the ark. As we said, a lot of that is symbolism, but preparing the ark could also be, maybe right now trying to get out of corporate United States. You already see how they, laying people off and closing businesses down and stuff like that. So maybe, the people who got already into their entrepreneurship and start trying to, let's say, turn that up, and be more self-sufficient. That's like a form of creating an ark, something that you'll be able to get inside of, and it will protect you from the things that's going on. Because for example, with me, I'm not in the corporate United States. So when they start doing their layoffs and all that different stuff, it really didn't affect me. So, something like that. But the reason why is because years ago, I was preparing the ark, already going to college and learning something, and then getting out here and trying to be an entrepreneur on my own and go through those beginning stages. So by the time, the COVID thing happened and everything shut down, I was already in it, So that's like a form of creating the ark. Another thing I want to read right here is in the Quran, coming out of Surah 55, verse 33. It says this: O ye assembly of jinns and men, if it be ye can pass beyond the zones of heaven and the earth, pass ye, not without authority shall ye be able to pass. Then which of the favors of your Lord will ye deny? So right here, when you read in the Quran, it says that the assembly of the evil jinn and the evil men are going to attempt to pass beyond the zones of the heavens. So this is basically giving you a reference to those global elite during the days of Noah in the pre-flood world, in the pre-Babylonian society, because Nimrod's Babylonian Nineveh society actually was resurrected from that deviant, evil, wicked society that Noah lived in the days of that society. So when the flood came, it really didn't destroy all those evil people, and some of that evilness, it survived, because there are also certain evil spiritual forces that are working with these global elite behind closed doors. And when I say behind closed doors, I mean that these people may be doing these quote unquote rituals and ceremonies, but they may not really be getting in contact with no real spirits and stuff like that. That stuff not dealing with them. A lot of that is just more so like hocus pocus and movie stuff. But I will say this: there are certain forces that are wicked, that are throughout the cosmos or creation. And they have wicked agendas that are very, very similar to a lot of these wicked people on earth. So through that pact of them, through that indirect pact of them having the same type of agenda, they get, assistance, believe it or not. Okay. Now, not trying to sound too religious or nothing like that, but, I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So next, what I want to do is we're going to go into this picture that you have on the screen. And this is actually the Indian mound from the Rockefeller Cottage. Now, a lot of us are familiar with Jekyll Island and various global elitists meeting off of the coast of Georgia and having certain, conferences and whatever it is they're in there talking about, where ultimately they sit down and they start, coming up with a blueprint of where they want the plan to go. So they go through their social engineering plans. And this is where they create all these, events like 9/11, COVID-19, etc. And they even come up with dates when they want it to happen. And in order to understand a lot of that, there's a dude named Zach Hubbard on YouTube. He does something called gematria. And some of you may be familiar with him, but that's some of the coding that they use after they have their meetings together to see exactly what dates they're going to, do this stuff on, etc. A lot of that information also is in the Jason Society. So salute to that boy Asir, because believe it or not, a lot of the work that Asir has put out dealing with the adjacent society, when I connected that to the gematria that guy Zach Hubbard was talking about, it all made sense then, because that adjacent society, or those Nazi, quote unquote, illuminist Freemasonic skull and bones scientists, they are the ones, Nazi scientists, they are the ones creating the gematria. It's them. Like the ones that created these different bombs. Like when they told you in Project Paperclip after World War II, they went over there and got all these scientists and brought them to the United States and had them starting to create, various intelligence agencies, the NASA space programs, etc. Those are the people that create the gematria. So I don't know if that guy Zach Hubbard knows that, but if he wanted to get a little more information on that, he would want to look into that. But that's ultimately who's behind the gematria is, it's these scientists, these illuminist mathematicians that are in these various secret societies. But anyway, a lot of these people were meeting in Jekyll Island, and that's what this picture is that you see in front of you. So it says Indian Mound Rockefeller College. This cottage, was built by the younger brother of John D. Rockefeller, William G. Rockefeller. He lived in 1841 and died in 1922. One of the millionaire members of the Jekyll Island Club. Built about 1900, it was Indian Mound because of its adjacency to the old Indian Mound, believed to be a burial mound of the Gullah Indians of Muskogean stock, who were the last Indian inhabitants of Jekyll Island. So let's reread this and put this in context and get the nuance in this. So it says that this cottage, or basically it's a plantation mansion, was built by the younger brother of John D. Rockefeller. You all have heard of that last name before. One of the millionaire members of the Jekyll Island Club. Now, this Jekyll Island Club, once again, these are these global illuminists, global satanic people that I'm talking about. This is them. And they meet in various places throughout the world at various different times, but they've been around for a while. So there was a time where they met in Jekyll Island in Georgia. Okay. And it says that they built this cottage adjacent to the Indian mound of the Moorish Gullah indigenous, Moorish Muskogee indigenous Americans who were from the Southeast. So once again, a lot of their ceremonies and rituals and stuff, they would build their plantations and mansions on the mounds of the indigenous warriors who fought against them in the various wars. And the Muskogean Gullah, they fought against them, of course, in the Gullah Wars, of course, the Creek Wars, the Seminole Wars, etc. But basically what we call the Civil War, because the Civil War was between the United States and the various indigenous tribes who ultimately were a confederacy in the Southeast. That's ultimately what it was. All right. So, just showing you that this global elite, they know who the true power is of this I'll say this continent, the Americas. It's these indigenous American people, and they try to suck the spiritual energy out by doing a lot of their evil meetings and stuff like that, on the mounds and building buildings and around these types of things. All right. So anyway, let's move forward. So what I want to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about the modern day Tower of Babel and what that really is. Okay. So a lot of us are familiar that during the time of the Tower of Babel, the global elite of that time, they were all working together. They could all speak one tongue. And what did that mean? Did that mean that they could all speak the same language? Maybe, maybe not. But what's for certain is that they all had the same agenda. So the Tower of Babel ultimately was when the global elite of the ancient world had the same agenda, and they were able to achieve things because they had that same agenda. And one of the things that they were trying to achieve was how to penetrate into the orbital region of the Earth. Okay, this is something that they were attempting to do. Now, as far as, were these people flying in outer space with other vehicles and all that other stuff, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't really even think so. But as far as putting certain things in the orbit of the Earth, or at least above the atmosphere, rather, yes, And because the armies across this planet right now, believe it or not, they have certain space weapons. Okay. And I'll briefly talk about a little bit of that. So whenever you have these evil, entities and humans working together for these evil deeds, you got to remember now, whether some of y'all believe it or not, I mean, and that's okay because everybody can have their own beliefs. But, I do think and believe and know, in my heart that there is a real creator and there's a real higher power that is behind creation. So when these evil entities come together with that one agenda, what they're going to do is they're going to knock on bruh's door a little too much. And I just think through the organic response of the cosmos and through creation, they will get a reaction. Now, what that reaction will be, I don't know, but it is mythologized as what we know of as Noah's flood. So that is an example of it happening in the ancient world. And Yahushua says that in the days of the Son of Man, it's going to be like in the days of Noah. So what he's telling us is that, look, during my days and even prior to my return, this type of shit going to be going on. So if that's what they did during the Tower of Babel, which is try to quote unquote build a building that reached into the heavens. Now, did those men build a lot of tall structures during those days? Of course they did. But if you're thinking that they built one tall structure that literally reached all the way into, outer space, like, no, that's not what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that they had one agenda, and that agenda basically was trying to put them in the seat of the Most High, put them in the seat of the actual real eternal creator. And that's where the error came. And that's where they were destroyed ultimately. All right. So let's go into some of the stuff that they're doing today that they think is going to lead them to a desired outcome for themselves. But in reality, it may not. And a lot of what I'm about to say, too, some of it's already going on right now, but the full fruition of it may come, at a future time period. But nevertheless, we're going to have some form of descendants here, and they will have to address this and deal with it. So the digilic system, okay, or this global system, it's about 6 parts right now that I want to talk about real quick. I want to talk about the health, medicine, and pharmaceuticals, the military defense, the technology, the agriculture or alternate food or genetically modified food, mass communications, media, entertainment, or social engineering, and central bank / international banking and finance. That's the areas we're going to talk about real quick. Because when these people are meeting at places like Jekyll Island and stuff like that, these are the types of things that they're talking about. And they're talking about what direction they want this stuff to go. All right. Now, so the first thing is that they got this vaccine thing going on. All right. So that's dealing with your health, your medicine, and your pharmaceuticals. Now, they have this thing out here that they call COVID-19. Are there some people out there getting sick from some type of a respiratory, let's say, infection? More than likely, yes. But is what the news telling us about this true? No. Should you probably be believing a lot of these scientists and people that they putting on TV and these different politicians believing what they're saying about it? Probably not. Because the truth of the matter is that a lot of these companies that are putting out these vaccines are the same companies that put out these other so-called health products for us, but they have all these other side effects. So, I mean, just think about it. Like, just think about when you watch, let's say, ESPN or just your regular cable channels, and you see all these different types of like medicines and things of that nature. And it may be a medicine for, let's say, arthritis or something like that, because anybody that may have arthritis, of course, they want some relief from that. So they got a medicine for arthritis, but then it has all these other side effects, such as an inflammation or possible this and possible that, or even possible fatal. So you like, damn, I'm just trying to take it to get, a relief from the arthritis, but I may fuck around and die from it, or I may fuck around and get this from it. You see what I'm saying? So, just be careful with this whole vaccine thing. Because like I said, everybody has to make choices now. This is either a freedom thing or a digilic thing. And, you got to be careful because with this vaccine, ultimately, they could stick something in it that will be almost like a nanoparticle. And it could be a particle that ultimately helps them in other words, who knows what that particle will be able to do? I'm gonna just say it with that because I don't want to make this seem like no conspiracy stuff because it need to be taken serious. But the point is that, you know, just be careful, man. So the next thing is that the military defense, as I said in the Quran, how the evil jinn and the evil men are trying to penetrate the zones of the heavens. These people are trying to put up real space weapons, real satellites, and also satellite tracking. Because, for example, if there's a nanoparticle that they put in you, through their space tracking, they may be able to track you, you know, wherever you are on this whole planet. And also, too, with the space weapons, they may have certain type of like rockets up there, or they may even have lasers. They more than likely have some type of lasers. And of course, we also know we've been hearing about nuclear types of, you know, weapons. We've been hearing about that since the early 2000s. So just keep in mind that these various militaries and these various armies across the world, they have weapons. Now, as far as who is controlling the space right now and who's controlling the space as far as having the best weapons, having the best like satellites and stuff like that, you know, whoever is controlling that more than likely has a very, very big percentage of control in that digilic system. All right, that one world global system. The next thing I want to talk about is the technology that they're coming out with. Of course, you know, when I say technology, they started us out with the phones, the computers, the tablets, etc. They even got your phone. I mean, they got watches now where you can talk on them. You know, I remember watching that as James Bond and thinking that's cool. You know, and I know women I'm talking to now, and they call me and they say they on a watch and shit like that. So they got stuff like that now. So the technology is going to another level. And with, you know, like I say, if they stuck a particle in you, not only would they be able to track you, but they could also hook you up to cloud computing. And most of us are familiar with cloud computing, where ultimately there is almost like an aerial virtual storehouse of information, you know. So just kind of keep that in mind. Once again, I'm not on no conspiracy stuff, but just keep it in mind. Next thing after that, of course, a lot of us already know about the bad foods that are out here, you know. So you got to be aware of that. That's very, very explanatory, you know. And think about sterilization as well. You know, these people want to have the globe at a certain population because they look at it like we're the parents of the goyim of society, you know. And honestly, we've got to thin the herd because it's getting to be too many animals, because that's how they view people. So they want to sterilize people and, you know, try to put a stunt on certain population growth. So keep in mind with that. And as I say, you know, with the mass communications or the social engineering, you know, it's those fear campaigns with the TV. Oh man, it's about to be a new COVID vaccine. I mean, a new mutated COVID virus. You know what I'm saying? It's a mutated version of it now. Oh man, you know, it may be this. You know, it's about to be the presidential election. Donald Trump is about to leave the White House, and it's about to be inauguration of Biden. Oh man, it may be riots. It may be this. It may be that. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of that is going on too. So once again, when I talk about the pharmaceuticals, the military defense, the technology, the agriculture, the mass communications and media, all this stuff is in one gumbo pot. And the last aspect of that would be the central banking or the international banking and finance. Ultimately, what they want to do is get rid of all forms of like paper currency and coins. These central banks want to have control of all the money and the exchange of goods and services on this planet. So that means that all you brothers in the streets that are doing these street deals, getting money in the streets, you know, when y'all over there gambling on the corner or whatever it is that you're doing, they tired of that. You know what I'm saying? They want to get a piece of that underworld, that black market money. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to fully get rid of the cash currency system totally. So that means that there has to be a virtual digital currency that you got to tap into to make exchange for goods and services. And if it's digital, that means that they can monitor it and, you know, and make sure that everybody's doing things the way that they want them to be done. And they going to have taxes and things of that nature, and they'll be able to tax it easier. So what we're talking about is like a digital currency or a non-physical form of currency. So how they say right now that the dollar is losing value and all these various currencies are losing value because ultimately they don't want them to be no currencies at all. And this is something that they're working on right now. And, ultimately, that's where they want it to go. So they want to create new global transaction systems, like not even, replacing the dollar with a whole new type of currency unit, but literally getting rid of the whole currency transaction system and make it a digital transaction system. Okay. So these are the types of things that they, that they want. And ultimately everybody has to make a decision on what it is that they want. So the next thing I want to talk about is to the so-called black man. What are you going to do regarding all this? You see, because what you don't understand is that another part of the global coalition is that you must always be at the bottom. You must always be the battery and be the blood and be the oil for the digilic system to survive and to continue to go forward and for a lot of their plans to come into fruition. So, what a lot of you brothers going to do? That's a question you got to ask yourself. And you need to prioritize, what's important in your life and what's relevant in your life, who is important and who is relevant. And you need to deal with them, and you need to be a leader, in that area, because unfortunately, a lot of these so-called black families are very, very broken. There are no real men around. And the few males that may be around, they don't have the tools and the skills and the mental fortitude to be true leaders, believe it or not. So a lot of these so-called black families are going to be in trouble because the men in the families are not prepared for really what's needed right now. Like, this is some serious shit that we talking about. I'm not talking about this ain't no play stuff, So if you so-called black men don't make the right decisions on a lot of stuff in your life right now and what you putting your time towards, etc., it may not hurt you. It may not hurt your son, but it can hurt your grandson. So just keep that in mind, because when these people go to their plans, like at Rockefeller Cottage, they're not planning just for you. They're not just planning for your son. They're planning for your grandson and your great-grandson and your great-great-grandson. So keep that in mind. What I want to do now before we wrap the tape up is I'm going to read a little bit in my own book, America, a Moorish Paradise of the Plumed Serpent. And I want to talk about the response of the indigenous Muskogee Americans, Yamasee Americans from the Southeast, who responded to the digilic system of their time. Because as you can see right here, it said that in 1841, John Rockefeller was born. In 1841, around the early 1810s, 20s, and 30s, this is really when the American Civil War started. Because you had your Creek War going on. You had Andrew Jackson coming into the South trying to steal more of the land. You had a lot of stuff popping and going on. And you also had your Seminole Wars getting ready to go down too. So really the Civil War started in like the 1810s, around the time of the what they call the War of 1811. This is really all part of the Civil War. Okay. The Indian Removal Act, the Trail of Tears, all that stuff is part of the Civil War. And the indigenous Moorish tribes of the Southeast, of course, were the Confederacy. So the American Confederacy are the various tribes that are in the Southeast. So if you all have ancestors or a grandmother or somebody in the family that told you that you are of Gullah ancestry, that you are of Seminole ancestry, that you are of any of these various tribes' ancestry, these were the ones that were the Confederate real land owners, the real true Americans of the South. Okay, that's who those people were. So I'm gonna read a little bit about, that history. All right, this is coming out of chapter 12. Let me see what chapter this is. Yeah, this is coming out of chapter 12, the Amaru Civil War. All right. In the early 1800s, a Hebrew prophet by the name of Tecumseh prays for a dominant confederacy of united tribes of North America. Tecumseh's parents were Muskogee and Shawnee, and he was born in the Midwest/Ohio area. He grew up seeing his father and other Moors warring with pale faces that burned down his childhood homes. Tecumseh began piracy along the rivers, making it unsafe for Europeans traveling the water highways. Around 1805, Tecumseh's younger brother, Tinquatawa, the Shawnee prophet, began prophesying about end-time events that would destroy the Europeans and urging autochthonous Hebrews to get right with the Great Spirit. He burned Christian Bibles and clothes, preaching about abandoning white culture and wanted a return to the commandments of ancient ancestors. Many downtrodden, low-spirited Moorish Americans were rejuvenated by his divine power and chose to follow him and Tecumseh. Tenskwatawa accused chiefs who gave Europeans land of treason, telling the false leaders their land contracts were null and void. The prophet and Tecumseh were showing much needed resistance to alien invaders of the United States. Around 1808, Tecumseh and the Hebrew Americans built a city named Prophetstown in modern-day Indiana. The divine national movement of the prophet and Tecumseh evolved into a multi-tribal confederacy of autochthonous Americans sharing an Israelite type of culture or spirituality. In 1809, the Treaty of Fort Wayne was signed by Indiana Governor William Henry Harris and sellout tribal leaders, which put Moorish lands of Illinois and India under United States jurisdiction. In the fall of 1810, Tecumseh led an army of Moorish warriors to meet with Harris about the illegal land cession. Arguments erupt, leaving Tecumseh no choice but to prepare for war. Along with Hebrew prophets, Tecumseh goes down south to raise awareness and support, knowing tribes in this region are suffering from the same European crimes. In the southeast, thousands of American Creeks and Seminoles gather around to hear the great speeches from Tecumseh, which inspired the people to retain traditional customs and to never let up on pale faces. Accompanying Tecumseh were war prophets from the Midwest who tended to spiritual emptiness in the hearts of Southern Moors. Creeks and Seminoles took on the faith of Tecumseh, feeling they should do something about Europeans destroying American lives. The prophets of Tecumseh told the people the Great Spirit was going to send a sign to assure their confidence in defeating enemies. U.S. politicians were preparing to move into Southern territories and remove Americans from their tribal lands. In 1811, Creek and Seminoles witnessed a sparkling shooting star flying in the skies just a few months after Tecumseh's departure. This was taken as a sign from the Great Spirit to face the European and to have not an ounce of fear while doing so. Conservative members of the Upper Creeks created a faction called the Red Sticks and would be a terrifying force representing the divine national Moorish American movement of Tecumseh. So what I just went over is, like I say, some of the early history in the American Civil War. And if you want to go deeper into that, of course, you can get the book, and just hit me up in the email and, we can go forward with that. But that's what I was going into in that history right now, going into the prophet Tecumseh, who ultimately led a movement and created a movement that resurrected that Hebraic Muslim culture in the Midwest and also in the Southeast, because a lot of the people had gotten away from the original culture that was here, and they started taking on a European one. So he brought back that Muslim Hebrew type of culture and that mindset, and he resurrected that warlike spirit in the people. And he came throughout, the South, and basically, got a whole army together. And a lot of that army was in the war of 1812 against the foreigners. And it was in all the various wars during the Civil War. So when you hear about the Yamasee, when you hear about the Muskogee, when you hear about the Seminoles, these really ultimately are all the same people. They come from that same ancestral parent, indigenous American Yamasee stock that ultimately, came from those pyramid builders from Central and South America, because the pyramid builders of Central and South America, believe it or not, because they used to trade and things of that nature up here. A lot of them came up here and they stayed up here and they populated up here. So a lot of the indigenous people from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, etc., their ancestors were the pyramid builders from Central America that came up here through the Yucatan, and they were also part of the Maya Empire, or what they call the Maya and the Aztec Empire. But those indigenous Moorish peoples, a lot of them came up here through the Gulf of Mexico, and they stayed here, all right? So we really are the descendants of those people. If you are a so-called black person and you're from the Southeast. So I'm going to end it with this. You at the fork in the road. What are you brothers going to do?